All right, Corey Ackley, Hammers Through Performance. Yeah, so getting ready to watch Super Bowl here in a little bit. But as I was sitting around here, I have my computer that has my Dyno software on it, and I was just sort of comparing graphs like I do and looking back and looking at combinations, see what I learn and do a check on learning. And what I threw the last graph, the last combination on the gasser, and I pulled it to cross country and I overlaid them. And I was like, wow, it's amazing how far I've come along in the gasser. Because when I did that first build, as I talked about in the last video, where I'm at now with the exhaust versus where I was at with the Zoomies, how much power we've picked up. And so as I overlaid them, I was like, man, the gasser's come a long ways. It makes a little bit more peak horsepower than the cross country does, and the bigger 106 makes more down bottom. But with that being said, I would, as we'll talk about in the video, they're also pretty similar when you look at cam specs and some of the exhaust stuff like that. And the real difference is 6 cubic inches, and one has a long runner intake on it, and one has a short runner intake. So, anyways, I thought it was cool, and I obviously both the V92 and the X Cross Country, they're my bikes, they're my test mules, and like I said, I have 150, 170 or so full pulls on my cross country, and most of those are full throttle because when I'm testing stuff, I'm doing full throttle testing, and then I'll tune the I'll test and do a run and tune it, and then once I find a good combination, then I'll tune the rest of the bike. But most of them I just work with that full throttle tune for comparisons of combinations. And so I've run the snot out of it, and then you have the gasser, and the gasser has been on the dyno now for a month and a half, and so I'm probably getting close to 100 and 80 to 100 pulls on that thing as well. Maybe less, maybe 50, but there's a lot. And I don't know if you guys looked, if you checked out any of those other videos, there's a trailer hitch on the gasser. And there's no rear fender, there's no front fender, but there's a trailer hitch. And the reason why there's a trailer hitch on the gasser is I've hauled that thing from Texas to Maryland a couple times, hauling a trailer. It's a hoot. It's even more of a hoot now because I picked up 15, 20 foot-pounds of torque. Down bottom with getting the right exhaust combination. So anyways, with that said, let's move into the video. Hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll go from there. As we talked about, here's the overlay. And so, again, I wouldn't take a ton of information or data from this because they are, one is a 106, and, the 106 it's a bigger engine, but also has a lot less intake on it. It just has the heads, the throttle body, and the machined or the cast manifold with divider on it. And then 106, or the 100-inch has the torque tubes. So they sort of trade their power characteristics a little bit. But what you get is what you expect, right? You got a 106 cubic inch engine that makes about 10 more foot-pounds of torque below around 2750. And then it also makes its torque earlier on, so it makes peak torque at about 4100. Whereas the smaller gasser with the torque tubes, it makes its peak torque closer to 45, 4600 RPMs. And it also makes its peak horsepower at about 5,900 RPMs in the cross country with the 106, and the short runner intake makes peak power somewhere out there around 62, 6150. So again, no lightning bolts there, but I just thought it was neat to look at the two graphs, two engines that are very similar. When we go into the cam specs, you'll see what I'm talking about. Two graphs that are very similar in regards to power output. I thought it was neat. So let's move on to the specs. All right, what we have on the left-hand side is the cross country, and on the right-hand side is the gasser. And again, some of you guys are into the specs, some of you are not. So I'm always like try to share the specs on there. So what's similar? Okay, but they have the camshafts are very similar. I run the 472s in the cross country, and I run the SNS slash Lloyd cams in the V92. But the specs are very similar. The 495 has a couple more degrees of duration, both intake and exhaust, and has a little bit more lift. But those cams are very close to specs, and even in the overlap department, which I don't show here, the overlap is only a couple degrees of overlap difference there. And the header design is both Bassani stepped headers that go from inch and 3/4 to inch and 7/8. The Bassani headers on the correction on the gasser are about 6 inches longer, 5 inches longer than the headers, the primaries on the cross country. And then they have a different collector design where the collector on the cross country is the Bassani, which is a 2 1/4 inch, 12-inch long collector. And then we have the modified or the custom 18-inch long, 2.5-inch diameter collector on there. And then, they're both done with power commanders and stuff like that. There is no timing wheel on the V92. No, there's no timing on the V92. I sent that computer off and had that computer reflashed. So again, very similar in comparison to each other than cubic inches and intake manifold design. So as we transition and we look back at the dyno graph, now you have some data to sort of see what does this mean? What does different runner lengths mean? Or what does it not mean, but what does it display on the graph? And then, what is that cubic inch difference there? And so their disparity is not as much as you would expect to see, or even I would expect to see on there. But I think why that is twofold. One is I think that the exhaust on the gasser is optimized because I'm not trying to package it in like I am in the cross country. So I think that's some of the things there. And obviously you see a little bit different intake runner lengths. All right, thanks. So what did we learn? Hell, I don't know. You take a 106, you take a 100-inch, and they're similar when we talk about camshafts and at least headers and things like that. But when you throw in different intake manifolds and different collectors, you sort of get not what you would expect, right? You would expect if you had a similar build, when you talk about camshaft and things like that, and you add 6 more cubic inches, you would expect to see gains across the board. But when we throw things in there like collector lengths and diameters and intake manifold designs, what we start doing, we start skewing what we would expect. Now, if this was, if I took the gasser and I was to put that, I do have a 106 kit in there. If I took the gas like it is now and threw that 106 kit in there, then I think you'd see even better numbers. But what we're seeing is that the cross country has some limitations on packaging. When an intake manifold, the air box, it has a plenum on it. The airframe becomes a plenum because now those 2 throttle bodies are feeding off each other because they are now enclosed into a common plenum, and that affects things. And then we're limited on exhaust configurations because you have to carry saddlebags and things like that. So there's some challenge in there. So I don't know if we learned anything from the standpoint of, hey, this is some definitive stuff. What we learned is that optimizing whatever combination you have is always a good thing. And I was just sort of surprised all hell as I'm getting as much power out of the gasser as I did, and again, there's some exhaust stuff that we did sort of blows me away. So anyways, pretty cool. Again, I have established a YouTube page, Hammered Steel Performance YouTube, and so I share these videos on Facebook, but I'll also put them on the YouTube page as well. That way they're sort of archived there forever. So hey, hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, this is not really about learning on this one here. We're just sort of showing how things can affect. And good luck watching Super Bowl, and hope your team wins. All right, good night.